A man rescued a beggar on the street and left her at home with his sick mother. However, when he returned from work, he was transfixed by what he saw. The first week of December brought with it a pleasant cold. The air already exhaled the smell of the approaching winter, along with the delights of the Christmas holidays and end-of-year celebrations. John drove alone along the city's main avenue, enjoying a leisurely pace. It was early Monday morning, and the avenue was deserted, allowing for serene driving without the usual traffic jams. John liked this tranquility. After all, what could be better than driving smoothly in the silence of the early morning, while the grandeur of the skyscrapers contrasts with the white of the snow? Suddenly, something strange caught his attention. In the middle of that piece, there was an orange patch covered in snow. John found it curious and decided to check it out more closely. Without understanding exactly why, he hit the brakes and got out of the car. He walked towards the mysterious object, and, as he got closer, he got a big surprise. "My God!" he exclaimed. It was a girl, kneeling and trying to brush the snow off her overalls. He looked to be about 7 years old, with round, rosy cheeks and gloves covered in small pieces of snow. John quickly bent down, worried. She was shivering from the cold. "It's hot in here. I want to take off this blouse," the girl mumbled incoherently as she tried to unzip her overalls. "Mom, I'm hot. I need water." "Calm down, just a moment," John whispered, picking up some snow with his hand and bringing it to the girl's lips. She licked the snow and then opened her big grey eyes. "Snow. Can you believe it?" he commented with a sideways smile. "Where's your mother?" asked John, as he watched the girl furrow her blonde eyebrows, trying to understand the situation. She shook her head, and John noticed that her wool hat was soaked from the melting snow. "We took the bus," she said. "Mum needed to get home. Dad and I came walking." "And where is he?" asked John, intrigued. The girl looked at him confused. "I don't know. Dad said we were going to play hide and seek. He hid and I had to look. I looked and looked, but I couldn't find him. I'm tired." "I understand," John said, trying to remain calm. "Let's do this. I'll take you to my house so you can warm up and have some hot tea. After that, we'll look for your mother. Let me carry you." John picked up the girl carefully and easily, holding her tightly as he walked to the car. I knew the work would have to wait, as this situation required my full attention. As he carried her, he murmured worriedly, "Don't sleep, okay? Let's turn on the heat. What's your name?" The girl replied in a weak voice, "My name is Bella." 20 minutes later, John parked in front of the building where he lived. They went up to the apartment, and upon entering, he was greeted by the familiar silence and the strong smell of medicine that permeated the air. It was a lingering odor, a constant reminder of her mother's illness. Bella wrinkled her small, delicate nostril. "It smells like hospital," he commented. John placed the girl on the floor and began to untie her shoes. "My mother is recovering from an accident," he explained. "That's why we have a nurse at home. She takes care of her, gives her injections, and makes sure everything is okay." With a smile to try to reassure her, he continued, "So, are you hungry? I think we have pancakes. Do you like pancakes?" Bella smiled, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Is there jelly too?" John laughed lightly, agreeing, "Yes, there is. Jam, honey, whatever you want. You just need to promise that you'll also have some hot tea, okay?" Bella shook her head excitedly. "Deal! Where can I put these gloves of mine to dry?" he asked, shaking his still damp hands. "Let's find a place. But first, let's think about it while we eat the pancakes, shall we?" John said, taking her hand gently. Bella nodded and followed him into the kitchen. He placed her in a high chair, and she watched intently as John prepared the tea and arranged the pancakes. The kitchen was cozy, with shelves full of glass jars and an old clock on the wall. "Here are the pancakes," said John, placing a generous stack in front of Bella, "and the strawberry jam with honey. The tea will be ready soon." The girl picked up a pancake with her small hands, generously spreading the jelly. While John finished his tea, Bella enjoyed her food, slowly regaining her energy. John left quickly and soon returned with a pair of woolen gloves. "They're not your size, but they'll fit," he said, placing the warm gloves in her cold hands. "The important thing is that they are warm." Bella stopped eating and looked at him with childish curiosity. "Do you have children?" he asked in surprise. John shook his head. "No, but one day I hope to," he replied sincerely. The girl shifted uneasily in her chair. "My father says that those who don't have children are lucky. He says that children are a lot of trouble and cost a lot of money, especially girls." John felt a pang of indignation but controlled himself. "Ah, that's nonsense," he said, trying to soften his tone. "I mean, your dad was probably just pissed and said it without thinking." Bella lowered her head. "He doesn't just say that every now and then," he murmured. "My mother always cries." John felt a mixture of sadness and confusion. The situation seemed even more difficult when watching little Bella. The girl's family, so complicated and full of problems, was the type that no one would want to be around. What would be the right thing to do? Thinking about returning Bella to her parents became a dilemma. After all, dealing with her father once again didn't seem inviting at all. Sighing, John tried to compose himself. He looked at the girl and said gently, "Have some more tea. You probably haven't warmed up completely yet." He tried to change the subject somewhat clumsily before she could respond. As he turned around, he noticed someone arriving. It was Maya, the nurse, with her eyes red with exhaustion. "Hi," she greeted with a weak smile. The night before had been hard. Maya had stayed awake next to John's mother, who was facing another bout of insomnia. I had spent hours reading Juan Rulfo novels out loud, just to comfort the lady. "I heard voices and came to see who you were talking to," said Maya, observing the little guest who, without caring about the conversation around her, was dipping the pancakes in the jelly. "I thought it was the doctor again, but I was wrong. Who is this girl?" John smiled. "This is Bella. She's going to be with us for a while." Maya looked at him curiously. "Is she the daughter of a friend of yours?" Before he could respond, John asked, "What about my mother? How is she?" Maya sighed, clearly worn out. "I don't have good news, John. She hasn't been able to sleep all night. We read, we talk, but sleep just won't come. Her blood pressure is still high. It's hard to stabilize. Now she's finally fallen asleep." John nodded, worried. "Yes, I know what it's like." He took a deep breath, thinking about everything he needed to resolve. "Look, Maya, I have an important meeting right now. Can you take care of our little guest? Give her a hot bath and put her to rest. Bella played in the snow and is exhausted." The nurse nodded, agreeing with a slight smile. "Of course, I'll take care of her. Your mother is finally asleep, so now I have some free time." He turned to Bella. "Do you like taking a shower?" The girl smiled, her face still stained with jelly, and nodded. Relieved, John left the house, breathing in the cool, fresh air outside. For the first time in hours, he felt free from the constant smell of medicine that bothered him so much. Lately, the house felt more like a hospital, and her mother Stella's slow recovery made the atmosphere even heavier. It was painful to watch someone so close to him slowly deteriorate without there being anything he could do to help. John had been caring for his mother for a year. Since the accident happened, he hired a professional nurse, paid the best doctors, and tried everything to accommodate her whims. But despite all the effort, the results were frustrating. He consoled himself only with the thought that when the inevitable happened, he would have done everything he could to ensure her transition was the most comfortable. After that morning's meeting, he decided to go home at lunchtime to check on Bella. Lost in thought, he didn't notice his cell phone vibrating in his pocket until the insistent ringing caught his attention. "Hello?" he answered quickly. "Good morning, John. Can we talk?" It was Stella's doctor, who had an appointment scheduled for the next day. John felt a chill run down his spine. "Is something wrong?" he asked as he sat in the car and looked at the clock. "I had 10 minutes to spare before I needed to get back to work." "Well, today I reviewed all of your mother's x-rays in chronological order," the doctor began. You know that a femoral neck fracture is serious, especially for someone over 70, but in her case, the recovery was perfect. She should have been walking a long time ago. Then why isn't she? John replied, tired of the situation. You saw it yourself. She just won't get up. It's like something is stopping her. The doctor hesitated before answering. It's a bit of a mystery. I don't think the problem is physiological. Maybe it's something psychological. John was silent, trying to understand. Psychological? What do you mean? You may need a good psychotherapist, the doctor suggested. It could be that she's afraid of getting hurt again, or there's the possibility of secondary benefits. Secondary benefits? John repeated, intrigued. Yes, think about it, the doctor explained. Your mother has constant attention, lives like a queen, with a nurse to take care of her, good food, everything is perfect. Maybe she is, even if unconsciously, enjoying the situation and doesn't want to get out of that state. John felt his face heat up. Pretending to be sick? Do you think that's possible? We can't rule it out, the doctor insisted. I recommend you see a psychologist. That's all I can suggest for now. I'll see you tomorrow. The weight of the conversation stayed with John as he drove home. The idea that his mother might be faking it to get more attention deeply disturbed him. The words secondary benefits echoed in the mind. When he arrived, he saw Maya taking care of Bella. The girl seemed relaxed and much more at ease. Maya smiled when she saw him. Bella is progressing very well. She finished eating, took a shower, and is now playing a little, she said excitedly. Great, John replied, forcing a smile. I only have half an hour before I have to go back to work. He took a deep breath and looking at Maya asked, Can I talk to you for a minute? She noticed John's serious tone and followed him, curious. John went to the kitchen, turned to Maya and with a worried face confessed, The doctor thinks my mother's situation could be psychological. He mentioned something about secondary benefits, like my mum was enjoying the attention she was getting and so didn't want to get better. Maya frowned in surprise. That's hard to hear, John. But unfortunately, it can happen. Sometimes people get so used to being taken care of when they are sick that they can't imagine living any other way. I never thought about that, John said, still trying to process the idea. I always believed that my mother was really suffering. What if I'm wrong? What if she's just taking advantage of the situation? Maya sighed. Maybe it's time to seek professional help to understand what's really happening. A good psychologist can be essential, but please don't blame yourself. You did everything you could to take care of her. The doctor's words continued to echo in John's mind. During the afternoon, at work, he couldn't get rid of that strange feeling, a doubt that had never before settled so deeply. He tried to push away his childhood memories, but ended up sinking into them. No matter how hard John tried, it was impossible not to remember. His family was never poor, and his father was not an alcoholic, but there was always something missing in his relationship with his mother, Stella. She rarely seemed satisfied or happy. When John was a child, moments of pride or true affection were virtually non-existent. Stella was always complaining about everything, especially her school performance. He remembered how she often humiliated him in front of others, yelling and criticizing. John's father, unable to deal with the constant complaints, often took refuge in the garage, repairing his car to escape. On rare occasions, when he tried to respond to his wife, an argument would break out so intense that it made the atmosphere at home unbearable. After these fights, the mother cried, regretful, while John tried unsuccessfully to console her. John wanted to see his mother happy. As a child, I tried everything to please her, giving her small gifts or praising her. Even so, she always seemed sad and disappointed. Parent-teacher meetings were particularly painful. Stella always came home with a dejected look and sighs of frustration. I'm very disappointed, she said, and those words became a constant in her life. Over time, as John grew older, he began to resist his mother's increasing control. During her adolescence, Stella's suspicions intensified, even for no reason. She believed he was using drugs or getting into trouble, although this was never true. Her disapproval seemed endless. You have no future. You're going to end up being a cleaner, she said. And although the words hurt, John learned to defend himself and to become indifferent. But there was a moment that tested his patience, an incident he never forgot. Near graduation, a girl a year younger developed a crush on him. One day, as he was walking through the school hallways, she bumped into him, stopped, blushed, and tried to say something. John remembered how surprised he was and how he noticed her beautiful eyes he had never noticed before. That same day, during physics class, he found himself distracted, deep in thoughts about the girl. He spent the entire class absorbed without paying attention to the teacher. John was sitting at his desk, lost in thought, when a voice caught his attention. He didn't notice the question coming from the front of the room, and therefore received a warning from the teacher. The reprimand was for his inattentive posture, but at that moment, nothing seemed to shake John. He barely cared about what happened at school. After classes ended, John waited near the exit, anxious. When she appeared, a smile lit up his face, and he thought that that simple gesture was enough to brighten his day. "You're back," she exclaimed happily. John wanted to respond with something clever and funny, but no witty words came to mind. Instead, he picked up her backpack and muttered, "How can you carry so much weight? This is not healthy at all. Come on, I'll accompany you." As they walked, John pointed to a nearby house. "I live around here," he said, suggesting, "I'll drop you off at home, and then we can go for a walk." He didn't mention anything about his own home or what he kept at home, a diary full of feelings and dreams that he wrote about. In those pages, he detailed the moments together and the hope of building a life alongside his passion. But one day something changed. The girl didn't show up at school. John felt butterflies in his stomach, and as soon as class ended, he ran to her house. Her mother opened the door with a hard expression. "Is she home?" asked John anxiously. The woman looked at him with contempt and replied coldly, "No, and don't come back here again. My daughter will finish her studies in another city." John was perplexed. "Why didn't she tell me anything?" he murmured, feeling his heart sink. The girl's mother, in a firm voice, continued, "Look, boy, what my daughter does or doesn't do is none of your business. And for your information, Amelia told me that because of you, she started to lose herself, stopped studying, and even used drugs." "That's not true," John exclaimed indignantly. But the woman interrupted him. "I don't want to know if it's true or not. I only care about my daughter, and you are no good to her. Forget her, and don't come back here again." With those words, the girl's mother closed the door tightly, leaving John outside. Dejected, he sat on the front steps, burying his head in his arms. Inside, he felt destroyed. I knew her mother had read her diary and made up those lies to keep them apart. A deep anger invaded him, as if he had been irreparably betrayed. "What do I do now?" he thought, exhausted. As he reflected, John realized something sad. He no longer had a home, because a home is made of trust, not lies. Suddenly, the sound of the key turning in the lock woke him up. Her own mother appeared in the hallway, with a smile she could barely hide. "I made an apple cake, your favorite," she announced sweetly. "Thanks, but I'm not hungry," John muttered half-heartedly. "I understand," the mother replied, placing her hands on her hips, trying to convey some kind of comfort. John entered the house silently, taking off his shoes and hanging his coat in the closet. He was exhausted, but he needed to confront his mother. "Why, Mum? Why would she have become rebellious because of my violated privacy?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm but without hiding his repressed anger. The mother crossed her arms, her face impenetrable. "I know what you're talking about," he replied coldly. John felt anger boiling inside him. "Why did you go through my things? What did you say to her mother? Now she's gone to another city and I'll never see her again. Are you happy now?" he asked, desperation evident in his voice. The mother maintained a neutral expression. "I had nothing to do with it." "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, changing the subject. "Wash your hands and sit at the table." John felt a wave of frustration. "Why are you lying to me?" he asked, tired of her denial. The mother continued, insisting, "I already said I had nothing to do with it." He watched her for a moment, trying to find some sign of truth in her eyes, but all he saw was a wall of denial. "I understand. So it had nothing to do with it? Maybe I'm going crazy, right?" John said, using a sarcastic tone, before retreating to his room. He sat down on the bed, picked up the diary, and started rereading the pages, reliving each happy day with her. It was strange to think that That same morning, he was still dreaming of building a future with his passion. Now it seemed like everything had fallen apart. The only consolation was that graduation was only 3 weeks away. After that, he would finally go his own way. He remembered the moments before he got on the train and left everything behind. The day he left, his mother did not accompany him to the station. When she discovered that John was actually leaving, she acted dramatic. She put her hand on her heart, picked up the blood pressure monitor, and cried, trying unsuccessfully to convince him to stay. When that didn't work, he started shouting and accusing him of ingratitude. The situation only didn't last because John's father intervened. "Stella, you caused this. Let him go or he will ruin his life," he said, looking at his son with understanding. John felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you, Dad, for understanding and supporting me," he said, while his father just patted him on the back in response. At the station, as the train began to move, John sighed in relief. "Now I am free. I can finally start my life," he thought. After that day, John rarely visited his parents. He only came once a year and never spent the night at home. His mother resented him, but his father seemed to understand. On the first visit, months later, the father asked for help cleaning the garage. John accepted, but upon entering, he noticed that the place was impeccably organized. "What kind of mess were we going to clean up?" he asked, laughing. Instead of answering, the father took 3 white envelopes from under the car seat. "These are her letters," he said, handing them to his son. "She never forgot you," he continued writing. John was surprised. "Why didn't you ever tell me before? A letter would have been enough," he asked, perplexed. The father turned red with embarrassment. "Your mother hid them. I managed to get them back, but don't be mad at her. Your mother is complicated, but I believe she wanted the best for you." John looked at his father with understanding. "I understand, Dad. But you didn't agree with her, right? If not, you wouldn't have given me the letters." John sat on the train chair, holding a pile of crumpled letters and with a heavy heart. Fate was taking him back to a life full of challenges, but the words in the letters were what really made him tremble. Her eyes swept each line, trying to take in what Luna had shared. His father had scratched the back of his head, a habit that appeared in moments of tension. With a sigh, he faced John with a serious expression. "Well, son, now that you're an adult, I think it's time to talk about something difficult." John listened carefully. "That's why your mother and I got married in a hurry. It's not that either of us is good or bad, but we are very different. Our ideas don't align." His father's eyes looked down, embarrassed, and he hesitated. "Maybe now we can seek happiness."
Before we continue, I need to tell you something amazing. Do you want to attract a lot of money into your life? Learn how to do it with the secret content that I will leave in the first pinned comment, and start transforming your financial life. Let's continue.
The statement sounded like a relief after years of suffering. John swallowed hard. "Do you want to separate from Mommy?" he asked, hesitating. His father looked up, sad but determined. "Yes, John. I want to leave her. Don't you agree?" Honesty hung heavy in the air, but John, who always valued the truth, shook his head. "No, Dad. It's your decision. I accept it. You deserve to be happy too." John knew it wasn't his responsibility to change his parents' lives, but that didn't make the situation any less painful. Back in the living room, she decided not to tell her mother about Luna's letters. Her words still burned in his mind as the train moved forward. Reading the pages one by one, tears welled up. Luna talked about her mother's destruction of her old cell phone, forcing her to have a new device with only 2 contacts, her own mother and her aunt. Luna's aunt was strict, making sure Luna had no freedom at all. The control was absolute. After school, Luna had to study, do household chores, clean, cook, and take care of the garden under constant supervision. The second card revealed a trick. Luna would escape to the damp basement where her aunt didn't like to go to write her letters. There, he got precious minutes of privacy. A week was the time it took to finish each message. If John wanted to respond, she explained, he could send the response to a friend at school. In the third letter, Luna promised not to bother him anymore, understanding that the situation could be too much for him. When the train stopped, John quickly got out and bought a bus ticket. He needed to find Luna. The plan was clear: save her by any means possible. Upon arriving at his friend's address, anxiety took over. A tall girl with a black braid answered the door, looking at John in surprise. "It's a very good drawing," she said, looking at an old portrait of Luna that John held. John tried to uncover any clues. "Do you have her address or phone number?" he asked. The girl frowned. "Her aunt forced her to get married a few weeks ago," he revealed. "She and her husband moved to the countryside. She didn't even finish school." John was speechless. "They forced Luna to get married? What do you mean?" The friend took a deep breath. She had no choice. She was locked in the attic, beaten every day. The option was to get married or be trapped forever. John felt despair growing. "Please tell me where they are," he demanded. The friend shook her head. "I don't know. They left suddenly without warning. I didn't even get to say goodbye to her." That night, as soon as he got off the bus, John, haggard and tired, stopped in front of a store and bought a bottle of cheap wine. He found a corner on the sidewalk in front of the stop, sat there and opened the drink, trying to calm his tumultuous mind. The body, already accustomed to the way home, guided him almost automatically to his room. John woke up in the middle of the night with a horrible headache and a dry mouth. Next to his bed there was a bottle of mineral water and a basin. It was then that he remembered that the neighbors helped him get into the house, hearing the noise he made when trying to unlock the door. "God bless you," he murmured as he drank the water before falling back into a deep, dreamless sleep. Life took its course. John's father ended up separating from his mother, but he didn't live long after that. He died peacefully, 5 years later, while sleeping. When the doctor called to tell John, the young man was already settled and took care of the funeral expenses. At the cemetery, he held a heavy bouquet of roses, whose thorns hurt his hands. "Thank you, Dad. I love you and always will," he whispered as he placed the flowers on the grave. The relationship with his father was never as close as John would have liked, but it was also never distant. There was mutual respect and gratitude, especially because his father had helped him through a difficult time by giving him Luna's letters. After his father's death, something unexpected happened. One day, looking for shelter from the rain, John walked into a cafe and felt a familiar look. Luna was there, sitting by the window. Upon noticing her presence, his heart skipped a beat. "My God, it's you," he whispered, and Luna smiled, brightening the grey day. "Yes, I'm here," he replied, raising his glass of juice in a shy toast. John smiled, lifting his coffee cup. "How are you, John?" Luna asked, her voice soft and full of curiosity. He took a deep breath. "Normal. I moved here after high school, finished college, and now I'm working," he replied. "I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye. I was afraid you'd be angry," she said. Luna took a sip of her juice, guilt visible on her face. John interrupted her. "Of course I was angry, but it wasn't your fault. I received your letters much later. My father found them and gave them to me," he explained. Luna shook her head. "I wrote so many times, but when you didn't respond, I thought my mother had hidden everything," he revealed. John's heart sank at the memory of the suffering, but now Luna's presence was a relief. "It doesn't matter anymore. What's important is that we found each other again," John said. The two talked for hours, until night fell. "They must be waiting for you at home," John commented, looking up at the dark sky. Luna shrugged, without evasion. "When I come here, I tell my husband that I will stay at the clinic until late. But in reality, I like shopping, going to the cinema, sitting in a cafe." "It's my little moment of freedom," she confessed. A gleam of sadness passed through his eyes. "I was never really free. First it was my parents, then my aunt, now my husband." John looked at her fondly, realizing when he looked in the mirror that time had left marks. Wrinkles were forming under her eyes, and her once vibrant lips were no longer the same. But instead of caring about these details, he found something more significant. The flame of passion still burned in his heart. It was reflected in his infectious laugh and the innocent expression that lived in his eyes, as if he were that young man who had fallen in love for the first time. This was the love that had changed his life forever. "Do you want to go somewhere, maybe to the movies?" John asked, trying to break the silence. Luna, with a soft smile, ran her finger around the rim of her juice glass before responding. "I don't want to go to the movies. I want to go to your house," she said finally. That night, the two lived the love that had been taken from them intensely. Time seemed suspended, as if anything were possible. But when he woke up the next morning, John realized that Luna was gone. Her scent was still on the pillow, as if she had left her mark on the room. On the table, a note with just one word: "Thank you." There was no phone, no explanation. She simply disappeared. John tried to go to the cafe where he found her the day before, but no one came. It was clear to him that Luna had been there by chance, and he found himself caught up in the memories of that brief but intense encounter. John has moved on with his life, financially established and away from the constant criticism of his mother, Stella. Even so, he still helped his mother from time to time, sending some money, but there was always criticism or disapproval on his part. He already knew that he would never be good enough for her, and that trying to please her was a futile effort. John's life took a new turn a few years later when he received a call from his mother's neighbor, informing him that Stella had fallen while returning from the market. After examinations, it was found that she had fractured her femur, and this would result in a long and difficult recovery. John, worried, rushed to the hospital where the head doctor tried to reassure him. "Don't worry, John. The injury is serious, but your mother is in good health for her age. I think she will recover well," the doctor said. Stella, upon seeing him, tried to smile, but the smile was forced. "I'm lost now, son. I'll never be able to walk again," she whispered. John, trying to remain calm, replied, "You'll recover. Once you get out of the hospital, we'll take you to my house, do physical therapy, and hire a nurse to help you. You'll be fine before you know it." The mother smiled, but her face was as pale as a sheet of paper, the weight of the situation evident. When he finally took his mother home, John was faced with a frustrating reality. As always, nothing seemed to please her. Stella refused to do physical therapy, made no effort to get up, and the nurses who had been hired quickly gave up, unable to cope with her demands. Only Maya, a persistent nurse, managed to endure the situation, even with the difficult conditions imposed by Stella. John didn't hesitate to pay her well as long as she continued to work. But in the midst of this difficult routine, John met Bella, and soon the conversation with Maya about his mother's condition began to haunt him. He was at work, still thinking about everything that had happened, when his cell phone vibrated, displaying Maya's number. Before he could answer, the nurse's urgent shout interrupted him. "John, come home immediately. I don't know what to do about your mother." John didn't hesitate. "I'm going now," he shouted, already getting up to leave, without hearing the end of the nurse's sentence. Upon entering the apartment, the nurse appeared carrying Bella in her arms, visibly scared. From the mother's room came anguished and furious screams. "Filthy brat! I don't want children in my house. I don't want to see them. Get her out of here!" Stella screamed, and her voice shook with anger. John approached and, trying to calm the atmosphere, said, "It's okay, girls. I'll sort it out." He quickly walked towards his mother's room. When he got there, he saw Stella standing, causing real chaos. Vases, mugs, and portraits were scattered across the floor, all broken. When she saw him, her reaction was immediate. "Get that girl out of here. Out!" He stood still, staring at the scene, until it momentarily froze before collapsing to the ground. "John, help me! I need to get up!" she begged, reaching for her son. With a sigh, he replied, "Don't be dramatic, Mum. I've been here a long time, and I saw you standing still without having difficulty walking." He tried to remain calm as he spoke. "You're imagining things. I was trying to call Maya," she tried to justify herself. "I tried to get to the bookshelf." Her voice trailed off and she fell silent. John, without losing focus, said firmly, "Go back to bed. I'll ask Maya to give you a sedative." He looked around, seeing the pieces of glass scattered across the floor. He left the room with firm steps, trying to organize his thoughts. In the hallway, the nurse and Bella were still there, waiting. The girl seemed nervous. "Give me something to calm me down," she said. "My mother is very excited." She looked at Maya and then turned to Bella, who was visibly tired. "Very little one. Do you want to drink some milk with honey and rest for a while? When you fall asleep, I will start looking for your parents." Bella, with teary eyes, replied, "I don't want to go home." My father shouts at my mother. He hits her and then he hits me. He says he wanted a boy and I was born a girl. Nobody needs me, she said, her voice cracking with pain. Let's calm down, John said softly, trying to comfort the girl. I'll think about what we can do. Do you love your mother? Bella, her eyes swollen from crying, whispered, I love it. Then it's okay. Your mother needs to know where you are. She must be worried. John asked carefully, Do you remember her phone number? Bella looked at John and, with her eyes shining with a little hope, pulled the tag on her clothes. Here, she said. The number is here. Great, John replied. Let's have some milk, then I'll call your mum. He smiled, trying to bring some relief to the situation. John picked up the phone and dialed the number. After a few seconds, a woman answered the call with a nervous voice. Hello, are you Bella's mother? He asked. Yes, it's me. Who are you? Do you know anything about my daughter? The woman's voice brimmed with despair. Calm down, Mum, John said, trying to calm her. My name is John. Bella is at my house right now. She is fine. I found her lost on one of the city's main avenues. Please come look for your daughter. The woman on the other end of the line burst into tears, relieved. Thank God she's okay. She sobbed, thanking John with all the gratitude she could express. John looked at Maya, trying to reassure her. Everything is fine. I'll let Bella talk to you now. Bella, with a smile on her face, approached the nurse. Mom was lost, but John found me, gave me pancakes, and has lots of coins and a good nanny. Mum, will you come get me? He asked hopefully. Yes, I'm on my way. Stay there with John. He seems like a good man. I will get there as soon as possible, the mother replied, her voice full of relief. Then let's wait for her. How about you take a nap, suggested John. And Mum, I'll wake you up later. When the girl was comfortable, John hung up the phone and placed her on the bed in the guest room. He covered her with a blanket, creating a cozy feeling, as if she were in the den of a protective bear. Okay, the bear will take care of you. He'll keep you safe, John said, watching Bella fall asleep. Before she fell completely asleep, he whispered, Sleep well, and left the room, leaving the girl at peace. In the kitchen, the nurse was waiting for him, ready to report what had happened. She's sleeping well, Maya reported as John poured himself a cup of coffee. Now tell me what happened here. Maya took a deep breath, still confused. I was taking care of the girl, helping her take a nap, when her mother called me. He asked what the child's voice was. I told her that the girl was the daughter of a friend of mine, so I couldn't believe what I saw. I didn't know what was going on. And then? John asked, worried. It was then that the mother started screaming, demanding that I bring the girl to her. I called Bella, and her mother began questioning her about her identity. Suddenly, the mother's name appeared, Maya explained, rubbing her hand across her forehead. I protected Bella the best I could, but her mother was furious, breaking everything around the house. She was screaming, saying she couldn't put her feet on the floor without feeling pain. This is serious, said John in disbelief. I quickly grabbed Bella and ran outside. I locked her mother in the room and called you immediately. My God, Maya replied, scared. You called. Have some tea and calm down. We've both had a rough day, John suggested, trying to calm the nurse. The doorbell rang shortly after, interrupting the conversation. Nurse, I'm here, John said, standing up and opening the door a crack. The silence that followed was long, making Maya feel uncomfortable. She didn't know what to think. What was happening? John stood in the doorway, his expression grim. John, you're mine, Maya stuttered, almost in disbelief. He reached out, pulling her closer. Maya started to cry, not knowing what to say. Everything is fine. Bella is sleeping. Come on, Maya, stay calm, John said, trying to reassure her. Still not believing what he was seeing, John kneeled down next to the sleeping girl, his trembling hands touching her hair and adjusting the blanket. Let her rest for a while. She's had a tiring day, John muttered, whispering to the sleeping girl. Afterwards, he led Maya to the office and placed her in a chair, her hands still shaking. We'll get through this, he promised, grabbing a bar bottle and offering a glass of drink. It will help you relax. Obeying, Maya closed her eyes and drank the drink in one go. Now tell me everything from the beginning, John asked carefully. Maya sighed and began to tell her story. My family forced me to marry Roberto, my husband. He said I needed to have children, at least 5 boys. He didn't love me, but I thought that being young I would be able to give birth several times. But that wasn't the case. John watched her intently as she continued. Roberto was irritated that I had difficulty getting pregnant. He hit me, saying I was wasting time, so I started going to a fertility clinic. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with me and suggested that Roberto undergo tests. But I didn't tell him anything because I knew he would attack me if he knew there was a possibility he was infertile. She paused, remembering the difficult moment. It was the same day I met you at the cafe. A few weeks later I was pregnant. I thought Roberto would be elated, but he said that a sheep is only good for wool. When I gave birth he was expecting a boy, but we had a girl. He screamed that he didn't want another mouth to feed, that a girl was useless. Maya looked down, trying to hold back the tears. I tried not to let myself get upset because I had a beautiful daughter. But now Roberto is acting strangely. He said he would take Bella for a walk, but he came back alone saying she was lost. When I went to get ready to go to the police, I received your call. John listened silently, and then asked the question she had been dreading. Wait a minute. Did you get pregnant a few weeks after we met at the cafe? Can Bella be my daughter? Maya couldn't respond right away. Doubt consumed her. You said that there was a suspicion that Roberto was infertile, and her age coincides with mine. Tell me the truth, Maya. Is Bella my daughter? John looked at Maya with a determined look, interrupting what she was saying. He felt that the situation was taking a new direction, a direction he could no longer ignore. She was silent, looking at him with an expression of uncertainty until she finally shook her head. I really wanted to get pregnant, she said in a low, barely audible voice. When I left you that morning, I had hope. I thought maybe it was possible, but it ended up happening the way it did. I didn't tell him, because I was afraid that Roberto would discover the betrayal. John scratched his chin thoughtfully, and with the same determination replied, You know I won't let Bella or you go back to that monster, right? Stay here at home today. Let's start taking care of everything, the divorce, the documents, everything. I will help with whatever is necessary. She looked at him, surprised by his willingness to help. John, would you do that for me? Would you really do that? She seemed to struggle to believe it. Yes, it's decided, he replied firmly. You two are going to stay here, and we're going to start taking care of everything. Let's wake Bella up and break this news to her. At that moment, the door opened, and John's mother entered the room with a steady look. She walked past him without hesitation and sat down next to John. That's not part of my plans, Stella said, looking at him with visible contempt. Are you telling me you're going to get married and forget your mother? I don't understand how you can be so determined like that. Why did you pretend to be sick for so long? John interrupted before she could continue. Mom, that's enough. This is my home, and the decisions are mine. I've already decided. Mine and Bella will live here. If you don't like it, you can leave. Now you no longer need my care. Stella sighed heavily, her eyes full of tears. Yeah, I always knew you were just like your father. I just didn't want to believe it. But they warned me, one day you will remember me when your children do the same to you. She looked at Maya with a look full of hatred. You always knew what was going on. I warned you, and I did everything to keep you away from my son. But now you're going down this path, as if that were right. John was undeterred. You found a way to come back, he said, no longer able to take his mother's attacks. Stella turned to him, her eyes full of anger. If you marry her, you will never be my son again. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. With these words, she stood up and with firm steps headed towards the door. Now I understand, John murmured in a low voice as she left the apartment. The door closed with a bang, and the room fell silent. Maya, still dazed, approached John. Your mother just left, right? She left, and I'm fine. She no longer needs your services. She won't need me anymore, John replied, calmer now. If you need a job, maybe you can stay with us. It could be Bella's nanny, my daughter. Maya smiled, understanding the offer. She knew the situation was complicated, but she was relieved that John had found a way to handle everything. Suddenly, a soft, sleepy voice filled the room. Mom, are you here? Bella, still with her eyes half closed, ran into Luna's arms. Luna jumped up from her chair and extended her arms to Bella with a warm, emotional smile. Bella, My daughter, you know that we are together now. We talked and decided that the best thing is for us all to live here. And your mother has already agreed, right? John said with radiant happiness, not hiding his joy at seeing the situation finally moving forward. Luna looked at him with a sincere smile and in a low voice whispered, I always had hope that one day you would find me and that this nightmare would finally end. John, touched by her words, hugged her affectionately and gently kissed her forehead. All the nightmares are behind us, and only good things await us, Luna, he said confidently. However, worry still hovered over Luna. She looked at him with an apprehensive expression. What about my mother? How am I going to be able to give her the support she needs? Even with everything that happened, she is still my mother, he said, the pain evident in his words. John sighed, trying to ease the tension. I don't know, Luna, but I'm not ready to discuss that right now. Let's focus on what we can control. He wrapped her more tightly in his arms, while Bella, eyes shining, snuggled against her mother. Maya watched the scene with a smile on her face, touched by the union that was forming. The family was reuniting, and she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for them. Meanwhile, Stella, now alone in her home, decided she needed to vent to someone. He invited a neighbor to talk, hoping to find comfort and perhaps support to justify his son's actions. You have a good son, Stella, after all. He went his way and you can't stop him anymore. You're upset because he's no longer yours, but his, Luna's, said the neighbor serenely. Stella shouted, full of anger. He abandoned me. It was because of that woman that he left me for her. But the neighbor shook her head, aware that Stella still didn't understand the situation. You always wanted him to be yours alone. But he's grown up, Stella, and now he needs to go his own way. The argument was interrupted, and Stella, still furious, walked away, looking out the window. Winter was coming to an end, and the children's laughter in the distant park made her feel even more empty. She still hadn't reconciled herself to the reality that her son had moved on. Months later, Stella, overcome by a whirlwind of emotions, made a decision. He took a train back to John's hometown, hoping that maybe he had changed his mind. Once there, she hesitated before ringing the bell, sitting on a nearby bench. She still hoped that by explaining her stance and apologizing, she could return to live with him. Suddenly he saw John and Bella. He carried her on his shoulders, and Luna, smiling and visibly happy, held his hand. What shocked Stella the most was the fact that Luna was visibly pregnant, stroking her belly with a satisfied smile. The feeling of indignation and anger took over Stella. How dare she take the place of a mother, steal her only son, and still get pregnant with him, she thought, full of frustration. Stella felt that everything that had happened had been planned by Luna to not leave her out and to ensure that John would not abandon her. Stella was returning home on the train, her face marked with sadness. When he arrived, he fell on the bed and, unable to contain his emotions, began to cry. Her fists hit the pillow hard as she thought about her son. The pain in my chest was immense. He was happy with his new family, and Stella, feeling left behind, wondered if he was truly happy. Maybe it's not so bad that he has his own family, he thought, looking out the window. Contradictory thoughts formed in his mind. After all, he was raising children, continuing the family line, but what about her? He no longer had a connection with John's family, his son, or his children. Outside, the neighborhood grandmothers chatted quietly on the bench, watching their grandchildren play in the park. Stella remembered how much she would like to be there, enjoying the moments with her grandchildren, if she had any. But at that moment, she only missed her son and his family. Summer was more beautiful than ever, but the empty feeling was hard to ignore. She sighed thoughtfully. For the first time, his heart felt truly sad. The next day, something inside her changed. He decided he could no longer let himself be carried away by loneliness. She needed to act. Stella went to the candy store and bought a big cake as a way of trying to fix something, perhaps what was broken inside her. He got on the train again and headed to the city of John. When she arrived at the apartment door, butterflies in her stomach made her doubt. What would happen if he refused her? But at that moment, Stella knew she couldn't go back. I had to try, even if the courage was fading. The doorbell rang. John opened the door, and upon seeing his mother, it took him a few seconds to react. Hi, John. I came to tell you that I was wrong about many things. I thought you should belong to me because I gave birth to you. But I didn't realize how much you did for me, Stella said, her voice low. John was silent, processing those words. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. You've really had time to think about this, haven't you? Now you realize that everything is not so simple, is it? Stella took a step forward. Yes, I thought a lot. I want to put selfishness aside and be a good mother and grandmother if you will accept me. John looked at the cake box and smiled slightly. Is this for us? He asked. Yes, I thought we could eat together, Stella replied. At that moment, Luna, John's wife, appeared. She stopped when she saw Stella there, and with Bella asleep in her arms, she looked at her in confusion. Stella, feeling the tension, spoke quickly. First, I want to apologize for everything I did and for interrupting your life. Luna looked at her husband, who placed his hand on her waist. Well, if you're really apologizing and reconsidering everything, welcome, he said, smiling. John invited his mother in. They cut the cake and started serving it. The kitchen was warm, and the smell of tea filled the room. Stella sat at the table, and something strange happened. For the first time in a long time, she felt calm. While everyone drank tea and ate cake, Stella looked around, taking in the welcoming atmosphere of John's home. Bella, now awake, was looking at her curiously. Stella felt an instant connection with the girl. I'm sorry for being so mean. I want to be part of your lives if you accept me. I can't wait to meet my grandson or granddaughter, he said, looking at Luna's big belly. John smiled softly. We all make mistakes, Stella. The important thing is that you are here now, willing to change. Let's start again. Yes, Mum. Let's give our family a chance, he replied with a sparkle in his eyes. I want you to be part of my life. Stella felt tears of joy running down her face. For the first time, she felt truly accepted and loved. He hugged John, feeling that his family was finally complete. From that day on, Stella worked hard to keep her promises. She got closer to John and started helping whenever she could. Precious moments with Bella also emerged, and Stella learned to be a present mother and grandmother. The simple act of buying a cake and pressing John's doorbell changed everything. Stella has found her place in her family and discovered that love and acceptance are the greatest gifts anyone can give and receive. And you, what did you think of this story? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support our work. On the screen, there is another story that will also touch your heart.